The town of Umoba had always been quiet, the frenzy of modern-day revivals. But everything changed when the Holy Fire Assembly was established at the edge of the town, right where the old marketplace used to be. At first, it was just a small gathering under a makeshift tent, but within months, it transformed into a grand cathedral, boasting flashing neon crosses, massive speakers that thundered prayers across the land, and an ever-growing crowd of desperate souls. At the heart of it all was Apostle Joel, a man unlike any preacher the town had ever seen. Dressed in a dazzling white suit with gold embroidery, he moved with an air of divine authority, his deep voice commanding attention like the voice of God himself. His name spread like wildfire beyond Umoba, reaching the ears of the sick, the barren, and the hopeless. They came in droves, limping men, weeping women, desperate families, drawn by whispers of his unmatched anointing. It was said that with a single touch, Apostle Joel could break generational curses, cure diseases no doctor could explain, and even restore destinies stolen by unseen forces. Miracle after miracle was reported. A blind man allegedly regained his sight. A woman on the verge of death danced before the altar days later. But there was something else, something unspoken, that lingered in the air, sending chills through those who dared to look deeper. Apostle Joel is not who people thought he was, and something about the Holy Fire Assembly didn't feel entirely holy. At first, Nkem had been just like everyone else, awed by Apostle Joel's miracles and moved by his fiery sermons. A young woman devoted to the church ministry, she had watched people fall under the power of his prayers, rolling on the ground as if spirits were being pulled from their bodies. She had seen the blind claim they could now see, the crippled toss away their crutches, and the barren women dancing with joy. She had even started to believe that maybe, just maybe, the Holy Fire Assembly was truly the doorway to heaven. But then, something strange started happening. 2 months later, one evening, as she walked through the market, she spotted Chica, a man who had been dramatically healed of paralysis just a week before. He was limping again, his legs trembling with every step. But what truly unsettled her was the way he avoided eye contact, as if he were ashamed. She saw another woman, one who had testified about being cured of an incurable disease, looking pale and frail as she leaned against a wall. A heavy feeling settled in Kem's chest. If Apostle Joel's power was real, why were the miracles fading? That night, she remembered an old woman from her neighborhood, Mama Ifioma, who had once warned her in a hushed voice, "Not all who call on God are truly his servants. Be careful, my child." But she was too in to understand nor even see the truth from the woman's words. A chilling realization crept into Nkem's mind. Who exactly was Apostle Joel, and where had he come from? Long before Apostle Joel became the revered Apostle Joel, he was simply Joel Nwokocha, a struggling preacher wandering from one town to another, searching for a congregation that would listen to him. But no matter how hard he tried, the doors of big churches remained shut. He was mocked, dismissed, and treated as an ordinary man with nothing to offer. The ministry became very tough and tough. "You lack power," one senior pastor had told him. "A true man of God carries evidence." Those words haunted Joel. What was a preacher without miracles, without followers, without power? Desperation led him to places he never imagined he would go. He met a fellow pastor that opened his eyes to the reality of the world of miracles. One fateful night, he journeyed into the Abanagu forest, a place feared by some group of occultists for its eerie silence and strange happenings. He walked deep into its heart until he arrived at a clearing where an ancient house stood. Waiting for him was a woman, a dark priestess dressed in a white robe, her eyes gleaming like burning coal. "You seek power," she said in a voice that was both seductive and terrifying. "Yes, make me powerful so that I will perform miracles and do wonders," Joel said with desperation and frustration. She offered him fame, wealth, and dominion over thousands, but at a cost. A blood covenant. That midnight, under the cold moon, every miracle he performs, he takes their destinies and offers them to the coven. To seal the sacrifice, he offered a sacrifice of the blood of a living lamb to the altar, The priestess collected the blood in a black bowl, whispering incantations as Joel felt something crawl into his soul. "Go and perform a miracle. Your congregation awaits you," the priestess said as she sprinkled the blood in him. He left the forest no longer an ordinary man. As the Holy Fire Assembly grew, so did Apostle Joel's power. His miracles became more dramatic, more shocking. What had started as simple healings and prophecies soon escalated into bizarre supernatural displays that left the congregation in awe. One Sunday, a woman was wheeled into the church, completely paralyzed. Apostle Joel placed his hand on her forehead, and she screamed, convulsing violently before leaping out of her wheelchair and running around the altar. The crowd erupted in wild praise, but Nkem noticed the woman's eyes. They were empty, almost lifeless because what is left of her has been taken, in exchange to walk again, and she didn't realize that. With fame came wealth. Influential business tycoons, politicians, and even celebrities began attending services, eager to receive Apostle Joel's divine touch. But his blessings did not come free. The church started selling anointed handkerchiefs that promised to wipe away bad luck, oils that could protect against enemies, and special soaps said to cleanse a person of generational curses. Each item came with a steep price, yet people rushed to buy them out of ignorance. During services, something eerie began to happen. When Apostle Joel prayed, some congregants would suddenly fall into trances, their bodies stiffening as their mouths moved uncontrollably, speaking in strange tongues. At first, it seemed like the Holy Spirit at work, but then, some never returned to normal. They wandered the streets afterward, muttering to themselves, lost in a world no one could reach. And all he would say is they lack faith to control the power he has given to them. Still, no one questioned Apostle Joel. To them, he was a man of God. To Nkem, he was something else entirely. She tried to make up what was actually happening. As his influence spread, so did his grip over his followers. It was no longer just about miracles, it was about control. Wealthy women in the church became his primary targets. He would call them out during services, his voice dripping with divine authority. "Sister Grace, the Lord has revealed something to me. Your husband is the reason your destiny is tied down. If you do not break free, your light will never shine." Fear gripped these women. No one wanted to be the reason for their own failure. One by one, they began distancing themselves from their husbands, pouring their riches into the church instead. They sponsored crusades, donated land, and built properties in the name of securing their spiritual breakthroughs. But Apostle Joel's darkest practice was reserved for the young, unmarried women. He introduced a chilling doctrine: spiritual marriages. "Some destinies are too sacred for ordinary men," he declared during a sermon. "They must be purified through divine union." It was not long before selected women, those he deemed chosen, were summoned in secret and forced into covenants of submission. Some whispered of nights spent in his private chamber, waking up with marks on their bodies they could not explain. And those who questioned him, they vanished. Some were never seen again. Others suffered unexplainable misfortunes, accidents, sickness, madness. By now, Nkem's fear had turned into certainty. This was no ordinary man of God. This was something else entirely. Nkem could no longer ignore the unease gnawing at her. She started wondering why her? Why was she only the one noticing all these loopholes? Why only she could detect what was deeply wrong with the Holy Fire Assembly? The miracles, the possessions, the disappearances, and nobody is saying anything. It all felt orchestrated. But she needed proof. Her opportunity came when she met Tata, a former church worker who had disappeared months ago after experiencing a near-death experience in the church. He looked over his shoulder before speaking, his voice barely above a whisper. "You don't know what you're dealing with," he warned. "That place is not a church, it's a trap. Everything you see is not only a lie but a power we can't comprehend." Tata revealed terrifying secrets. The miracles, the so-called prophecies, all this are from the forces of darkness. Some prophecies too were gathered from hidden surveillance and informants within the congregation. But worst of all, there was a place beneath the church, a place no ordinary member had ever seen except Apostle Joel. Determined to uncover the truth, Nkem sneaked into the church at midnight. The air inside was thick, heavy with an unnatural silence. Guided by the dim glow of her phone, she pushed open a door near the altar and found a narrow staircase leading underground. Her breath caught in her throat. The chamber below was nothing short of horrifying. Strange symbols covered the walls, ancient markings she didn't recognize. On a wooden altar, voodoo artifacts lay in neat rows, dried animal bones, pictures of some church members, blackened candles, a bowl of thick, congealed blood. Then, in the corner of the room, she saw it, a large, ornate mirror. But something was wrong. The reflection moved, shadows flickered across it, shifting unnaturally. And then she realized it wasn't just a mirror. It was watching her. Shiver ran down her spine as she ran as fast as her leg could carry her, out of the horrifying basement. Nkem knew she was running out of time. If she didn't act fast, more lives would be destroyed. She needed undeniable proof. But what she saw down there was something she couldn't unseen. But determined to do something about it, she looked for something that would force even the most devoted followers to see the truth. Late one night, she followed Apostle Joel as he left the church alone, moving with unnatural speed toward the forest at the edge of town. She kept her distance, her heart pounding. After nearly an hour, he stopped at the bank of a dark, slow-moving river. Torches flickered, casting eerie shadows as hooded figures emerged from the trees. Joel raised his hands, chanting in a guttural language she didn't recognize. Then the impossible happened. Joel's body convulsed. His skin darkened, stretched. His fingers lengthened into claws. His face twisted, growing sharp, bat-like ears. Black wings sprouted from his back, unfolding like a monstrous shadow. Nkem's hands trembled as she recorded the scene on her phone. But in her shock, she stepped on a twig, a sharp snap that shattered the silence. Immediately, heads turned. A pair of glowing red eyes locked onto her. Before she could run, Joel's guards seized her, dragging her back to the church. At dawn, the congregation gathered, unaware of what was about to unfold. Joel stood tall, his face calm, but his eyes burned with rage. He was about to silence Nkem forever when suddenly, a voice rang out. Pastor Chaik, an elderly minister long cast aside, stepped forward. "Your deception ends today," he declared. "I know who you truly are." Before Nkem was caught, she had already clicked on the send button. The video spread like wildfire. Within hours, it had been shared across multiple platforms, WhatsApp groups, Facebook pages, and even national news stations. The community was in shock. At first, denial took hold. Devoted members of the Holy Fire Assembly dismissed the footage as fake news. "This is the work of the enemy," some cried. "They have doctored the video to bring down a true man of God." But others, those who had already sensed something was wrong, watched in horror. The footage showed Apostle Joel's grotesque transformation by the river, the hooded figures, the eerie chants. As anger boiled over, chaos erupted. Furious townspeople gathered in front of the church, demanding answers. The more they argued, the more tempers flared, until someone threw a burning torch through the window. The fire spread quickly. By nightfall, the Holy Fire Assembly was reduced to ashes. Of everything he had longed for, was reduced to dust. Apostle Joel was condemned by the community for luring them and taking the destinies of young women and men. The town was forever changed. The ruins of the Holy Fire Assembly stood as a haunting reminder of the deception that once held so many captive. But from the ashes, a new movement began, one fueled by truth. Nkem, now a firm advocate for spiritual discernment, dedicated her life to warning others. She traveled from town to town, speaking at gatherings, churches, and even on the radio. "Not all who call on God are truly His servants," she would say, her voice firm yet compassionate. "Test every spirit. Do not be blinded by miracles alone." People listened, some with guilt, realizing how blindly they had followed Apostle Joel. Others with anger, still grappling with the scars he left behind. Meanwhile, Pastor Chaik took a different path. He started a healing ministry, offering counseling and deliverance to those who had been manipulated, financially drained, spiritually broken by Joel's practices, and spiritually taken their destinies. Former members came in droves, seeking peace, searching for real faith. Tears flowed, prayers were whispered, and healing began. But as time passed, whispers returned. False prophets will rise to heal the sick, raise the dead, and perform miracles that are not real, just like Apostle Joel. Kim watched from afar, her heart heavy. She knew the truth. Evil never truly dies. It simply changes its name. And so the warning remained: be careful where you worship. Dear viewers, what do you think about this story? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the story, give us a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and share it with friends. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest updates. Thanks, and see you in the next video. Bye!